First of all, welcome. We hope everyone is doing well during all the craziness of the pandemic, and hopefully things are going to get back to normal pretty soon. But we appreciate and look forward to talking with you this evening. Tonight, this is a friend and family's webinar that we are doing these once a month, and it's been the reason behind this is because many of you asked us if we would start doing a series so that you can invite some of your friends, and possibly a lot of you were talking about your children, and this may be one that's more pertinent in that sense, but I guess I shouldn't make too many assumptions. So tonight it's don't let your debt manage you, strategies to pay down debt and maintain a healthy budget. So my name is Jim Horrocks. I'm the CEO of Coastal Capital Group. I'm joined tonight by Camay Pascucci. Camay is one of our relationship managers. Many of you already know her. I can tell by who's on here tonight. So many of you already know her. We're excited to have her present today. Camay's been with us for the last 4 or 5 years, I think.
5 years it's been.
5 years. Five wonderful years, Camay. 5 wonderful years. So we're excited. So we're going to be trying to help you tonight manage some of the debt and come up with some strategies that can help you with that. So what is our outline going to be? Tonight we're going to always go over what our empowered approach to financial planning is. We call it empowered because what we believe is that we give you so much information. You understand that what you're doing. So when you go to make your choices, you understand how those affect you. So it empowers you because you can feel confident about the choices you're going to make. You understand how it's going to affect you to what you're trying to do toward your goals. We're going to talk about build and maintain a healthy budget, understanding debt. We're going to talk about credit score, obviously really important when it comes to talking about debt. And then finally, we're going to get to some strategies around if you are in debt, which all of us have some sort of debt usually. What strategies can we have to help control and make it work for you in a better way? And of course, this is always about you. So we're going to take questions. So there are a couple of different ways that questions come in. I'll be looking for them. We'll try to answer them all along the way. But certainly, like I said, this is about you. So ask any question you can. The rules of the game are you all are muted, as you know. And if you look on your screens, there's a question area that you can type in any questions that you may have. So without further ado, I think I'm going to bring in Camay to kind of take this over and start with our financial planning framework. So go ahead, Camay.
Well, thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Well, I'm very excited tonight to talk with you guys all about managing debt. I think it's actually a good time to have this discussion as during this last 12 months with COVID, this is one of the most asked questions to me from family and friends. And I know many of you actually on the call tonight have asked me to speak with family members as well. So when Jim brought up this topic for our next webinar, and when he was asking around who wanted to take this presentation, I eagerly raised my hand. And the reason being so is that this is actually one of the toughest topics to manage and to discuss. Listen, I've been there myself in my 20s. It's a struggle. It's really a hard topic to deal with. But listen, as soon as you get through that hurdle and have a plan in place, it is so empowering to have that feeling and to have that feeling of freedom once you have control of your finances. So what I hope tonight is that I'm going to share with you some solutions or some tools that you can actually take away with you tonight so that you can get onto a better path financially. But before we can even have a conversation about managing debt, I first want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of our financial planning process and framework. So the next couple of minutes, what I'm going to do is take you through our financial planning process. So let's start with, in the beginning of our planning process, it really comes down to you. It's about you and what your goals, what you're looking to accomplish. Our financial planning process has 2 major phases. The first is to coordinate and consolidate all of the assets that you have. And the second is to protect and conserve all that you work for in phase 1. Now, across on phase 1 under coordinate and consolidate, there's spending. This is just what you do every day. This is your budget, essentially. Next is your savings. Your savings is the money that you put aside for upcoming expenses. In this category, we have 4 areas that we check off. It's your emergency fund for your rainy day, debt management, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, education planning, and big expenses. Then we have your investing. This is where your money's going to be making money for you. We take on a little more risk. for your long-term goals. So we want to make sure that these 3 areas, you can see here on my mouse, that they're all working together as efficiently as possible, okay? What we don't want to happen is that we don't want this to blow up since you work so hard for it. So this is where the protect and conserve come into play. So tax planning, we want to pay Uncle Sam as efficiently as possible. Risk management, it's another fancy word for insurance planning. Do you have enough insurance? Do you have the right amount of insurance? And then lastly is estate planning. This is making sure that you have the right type of documents in place and to make sure that all the assets that you work so hard for are going to go to the ones that you love if something should happen to you. So all 6 of these segments work together and impact each other, and not one is more important than the other, and they all work towards you and your particular goals. Now this evening, what we're going to be focusing on is the savings category, managing your debt. So whether you have debt that you just can't shake, or if you have a budget that you're struggling to stay on discipline, whatever it may be, I'm going to walk you through some solutions tonight that you can, that we're going to talk about, there's some mathematical bias, and I'm going to show you some pros and cons. But each of the solutions aren't necessarily right for each of you. It is very important that you sit down and speak with your relationship manager. If you don't have one, because this is friends and family, I'm happy to speak with you. If not, go back to reach with your relationship manager, sit down with them and meet with them one-on-one to really break down what your goals are and what's your needs, and they'll help you figure out what's the best solution for you. All right, before we get started and talk about managing debt, I want to show this really cute video. What this video is going to illustrate is why is this topic always so difficult? Why is it so hard for us to focus on something, to do something today for later? It's so difficult to do it right now. So in this particular experiment, some cute 5-year-olds were given a marshmallow, and they were instructed if they don't touch the marshmallow over a 20-minute time, then they will receive 2 marshmallows as their reward. Let's watch this video. I love this video. Just give me one.
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have 2. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right.
Aren't they all so cute? He's a vicious one. Smelling the marshmallow. That's not necessarily eating it, right? I love the look on this girl. Eating it. A little nibble. Oh, licking it. Oh, that was too much of a struggle. Oh, this is my favorite. Oh, look at that face. So I love that face, because actually that face is probably what I look like at the end of the month when I'm towards my budget and I see a shoe sale at Nordstrom Rack. This is what I look like, and I know I just can't buy it. So listen, what is this video showing? What it's showing is that, hey, this is why it's so hard. It's in our DNA. It's just human nature. It's so hard to focus on something today that's going to benefit us for tomorrow. Take example for these marshmallows. These kids, they know they'll get 2, but it's so hard for them. It's so tempting to have that one marshmallow in front of them. So listen, what I hope today is that you'll get some tools so that you can double up your marshmallows. So listen, the first step in terms of managing a debt is building and maintaining a healthy budget, right? So we all know that awful B word that people don't like to talk about. I had one client that described that B word as nail on chalkboard, because every month her and her husband have that discussion and it turns into a brawl. We've all been there. But what I want to show you in the next couple of screens is hopefully you'll take away an easy process where you can track your income and expenses. We feel that the easier the process is, the more likely you're going to continue with and the more successes that you'll have. Okay. So what are the key ingredients to a healthy budget? It starts off with your income. What's coming into your bank account every month? And then what are you spending? What are your expenses for the month? Then we can figure out what's your surplus. And then when we figure out what's your surplus, where are you going to gear your surplus to? Are we going to put it towards your savings, or are we going to put it towards your investing? For tonight, for the sake of purpose, most of it, what we're going to be talking about is about debt, paying down debt. Okay, so let's start here with spending. So with your spending, we recommend that you isolate your expenses so that you can easily track it. Okay, there's 3 types of expenses to track. First is fixed expense. What fixed expense are what we consider non-discretionary expenses. So this is your car payment, your mortgages, your utilities, things that you have to pay to actually live. The next is variable monthly. I consider that as your discretionary. So going out to eat, going out to the movies, even grocery actually falls in this particular category. You might ask why. I need to eat. But with groceries, there's a huge discrepancy between shopping at, let's just say, Whole Foods for all your food versus shopping at Market Basket. If you'll see that the cost of shopping at either one has a true difference in total payment. The next is a variable annual. Variable annual is an expense that happens once a year. Examples that may include, let's just say, a vacation that you're going to take during springtime, or perhaps holiday shopping, because that tends to add up, and that happens towards the end of the year. Okay, so once you get an overview of what your expenses are, and you have your monthly income, which is what's coming in, and then we can figure out, hey, what is the surplus? Now, with your surplus, are you going to pay towards your education funding? Are you going to pay towards your retirement? Because most people here, like myself, you have more than one competing goal. So how can we figure out what to pay first? Okay. So I just gave you kind of conceptually an idea of the budgeting process. I want to make it more realistic by putting some numbers so that you can, get a better idea. Okay. So I'm going to take a family of 4. Okay, that has an income of $8,000 a month. And this is net income, okay? What net income is your income that you receive on your pay stub or in your bank account. That's after you paid your insurance, your 401k, and taxes. It's actually what you have access to, okay? So let's just say this family came and met with your relationship manager, and we figured out that their fixed expenses for the month are $4,000, and then their variable monthly is $3,000. And then they're saving for a family vacation, which is going to be $600 a month to save for. So between their monthly income with their monthly expenses, we learned that they have a surplus of $400. So again, what are we going to do with that $400? How do we best allocate those between all your competing goals? So most of the time, but not all the time, and this is why you want to meet with your relationship manager, most of the time you want to pay down your bad debt as soon as you can, okay? And the reason being so is that bad debt can eat up and erode your other financial goals. It can be extremely dangerous, which is why I wanted to talk with you today on how debt can be extremely dangerous. I want to give you an example of that. So we're going to walk into, we're going to talk a little about debt, but Jim, are there any questions?
Not at this point yet, Camay. Doing good.
Okay, all right. So let's start digging into what debt is. So we break debt down into 2 categories. First, it's good debt. Second is bad debt. What is good debt? Okay. Good debt is a fixed rate. It's a fixed rate on your loan. It's predictable. We know what it is. Low rate, the lower your interest rate, the less that you're paying for the loan that you're obtaining. And then there's predictability is good debt. Predictability is great because when you know what your monthly payment is, we can put it in your budget and we won't be surprised by anything, okay? And then lastly is mortgage. Mortgage is considered good debt because you're able to build up equity when you have a mortgage. You'll see later when I talk with you about solutions, how equity can play into managing your debt. It will give you a lot of flexibility. Oh, on the flip side, what is bad debt? Okay, bad debt is high variable rate. So if you have an adjustable rate and as interest rates rise, your debt is going to rise. So your payments are going to rise as well. Okay, so it's unpredictable. So it's hard to manage with your budget. Next is high rate. It's just going to cost you much more. So an example of much more to borrow from. So example of this is high credit card, high interest credit cards. So it's going to cost you more to borrow from. And then lastly, the golden rule is don't spend more than you can afford. Try to spend within your means. We've all been there. It sounds really easy, but we all know it's very, very difficult to do. Okay, so what are the impacts of bad debt? I'm going to use an example of a friend of mine who has a little shopping habit. Okay, now this may or may not have been me when I was in my 20s. I'm not going to disclose that, but let's just say my friend decided to take out a credit card from one of the major department stores, and that interest rate is 18.99%. You might say, oh my God, 18.99, that seems like a lot. But I've actually seen, when you read the fine prints of some of these credit cards, I've seen them go as high as 29, 26%. So this is a realistic, department store or what we consider bad debt interest rate, okay? So let's just say my friend with the shopping habit decides one weekend to go to this department store because it's their annual friends and family sale for a huge discount, she says, for 25 to sometimes even 50% end of year sale, right? We've all heard that, we've been there, and she's gonna get herself some deals. So over the weekend, she went, purchased up a few pairs of shoes, some great handbags, and some nice outfits. And she's like, I got so many deals. And then she's like, how am I going to pay for this? So let's sit down with her and we talk about her budget, and let's look at the impact of different minimum payments and how that affects the overall debt. Okay, so we sit down and she says, listen, I can only pay $100 a month towards this credit card of $3,000. Well, if she pays at a pace of $100 a month, it's going to take her 42 months, which is a little over 3 years, to pay that credit card down. It's costing her $1,100 to use, to actually get the debt, right? So the total payment of that full $3,000 that she took out is now $4,100. Let's just say she says, in example 2, Camay, I can only pay $75. Well, if she can only pay $75, now it's going to take her a little over 5 years to pay off the credit card. And now her interest has risen another $600 to $1,700. And her total payment for now is $4,700. Okay. And then she comes and says, oh, well, why don't I just try to pay the minimum? Well, what's going to happen here? If she pays the minimum at $15 a month, it's going to take her over 15 years to pay off this $3,000 loan, okay? Her interest paid to the company that's borrowing the money is $6,500. That's double than what she actually spent. And when it's the total payment is $9,500, that's 3 times. So when my friend says that she got a deal, did she really get a deal? I don't think so. She's paying 3 times the amount that she outlaid. And then most importantly, if you take a look from example 1 to example 3, the total payment, that's an extra $5,000 that she could have saved towards, her kids' education, her retirement, or any other type of situation that she's going to be paying herself. So this is how bad debt can definitely, easily snowball and get out of control. Okay. So I want to take you next to talk a little about your credit score. And the reason being so is that when I start talking about solutions on paying down your debt, the better your credit score, the more options that you're going to have in order to help you pay down the debt. So what is a credit score? Well, a credit score is a number between 3 to 850, and it's designed to show lenders how likely are you going to be able to pay your bills back. What the lender does is that they take your credit score amongst other information that they ask for you, and they do an analysis to see if you're worthy of them providing credit to you. The higher the number, the greater your credit worthiness. Okay. The two most popular credit scores is FICO, which many of you probably heard of, and Vantage Score. What makes up your credit score? Tonight, I'm going to use Vantage Score to explain to you how it's broken down. So you can see here the composition of your credit score. The two major parts of your credit score is your payment history and your credit utilization. So your payment history, what that is, it's, have you been paying your bills on time? Have you been late? Are you paying down your balance? Credit utilization is, let's just say you took out a credit card at Jordan's Furniture and you did it for the no financing. They issue a $15,000 credit to you and you use $14,900 of that and you don't pay off the balance. Well, that's going to negatively affect your credit because you're utilizing most of the credit that's given to you. So you want to keep that on the low side. The other factors include credit history length. How long have you had these debt? Credit mix. They want to make sure that you have more than one piece of debt and also different types of debt between, mortgages or credit cards. And then how often are you applying for new credit? So in terms of the actual credit score, where you want to be ideally is the blue and the orange, the excellent and the very good. But 61% of Americans are fair and above, which is the gray, orange, and the green. I'm sorry, gray, orange, and blue. However, if you find yourself in the yellow or the green, don't fret, really. It's never too late to start correcting your credit. I definitely would recommend for you to sit down with your relationship manager and figure out a disciplined method to start paying it down, because you'll be surprised how quickly your credit score can start increasing. Okay. So how do you check your credit score? Every year you're allowed one free credit report, and you can get that at www.annualcreditreport.com. And what that's going to show you is it's going to show you an inventory of all your debt, whether you made payments or not, what's the outstanding balance, and you just want to check for accuracy. And if you find that there is an error, you definitely want to get that corrected. And you can get that corrected by reaching out to one of the three credit bureaus, which are TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Okay, we covered a lot in a very, very short time. We went through the budgeting process, and hopefully you can take away an easy way of tracking your expenses. We talked a little about what is debt, good debt versus bad debt, and how impactful that could be. And then we talked about the importance of having good credit. But before we start talking about strategies, Jim, I just wanted to see, was there any questions out there?
There was a question, and one of the questions was, if someone paid off like a significant amount of debt, does that help or hurt them on their credit score? They have heard that it can hurt them.
Well, when you are paying down, what the agencies are looking for is for two things. They're looking to make sure that not only are you paying your credit on time, as I mentioned, but also if you do have debt, because sometimes when you don't have any debt, like young students, it actually goes against them because they have nothing to prove their credit worthiness, right? So when you pay down your credit card, it definitely always helps in terms of increasing your score. But if you don't have any debt to continue with. So if you went through a period of 4 or 5 years with no credit, that can hurt you because they want to show you that you have consistent ability to pay and consistent discipline around paying. Any other questions, Jim?
That was the last one.
Okay, so we're rounding up to the strategies. This is what you guys all been waiting for tonight. Okay, so let's take control of your debt here. The first step is to analyze your debt. Let's get your debt on the table. Let's see what you have. Is your interest rates, are they low or are they high? Do you have fixed or do you have fixed or do you have variable interest rates? What are your monthly payments? Are you making any grounds on those payments? Or are you more like, on a hamster wheel, not making any progress at all? And then lastly, what is your maturity dates on some of these some of these debts, or what do you want, or when do you plan on paying them down so that you can get them off your books? So getting this all under the table and really owning it and facing up to it is really important, because then you can start strategizing on how you're going to pay it down. The second is prioritizing your budget, which also means really prioritizing your goals. Many of us, as I mentioned, it'll be great if debt was your only issue, you had nothing else to pay, so you can just focus on debt, but that's not the reality. The reality is we all have competing priorities. So trying to find the balance between all these priorities is very important, and making sure that you have a discipline around how you're going to pay that down is also essential. Okay. So lastly, we're going to talk here about assessing what all your options are in terms of taking control. Tonight, we're going to talk about these 4 options for reducing your debt, managing your debt. The first is consolidating and refinancing. This is more of restructuring. It's more restructuring of what you already have in terms of debt and making your payment and your terms a little easier for you. The other 2, which is paying down your highest rate and paying off the smallest balances. Now, these 2 are 2 different ways of thinking and 2 different methods that, have, people have favorites. And I'm going to talk with you about the pros and cons about that. Okay. So let's start with consolidating. What does consolidating mean? Well, consolidating means that you're going to take a bunch of your loans and you're going to smash them together, and we're going to put them into one loan with hopefully a lower interest rate. How do you go about doing that? The first option is using, let's just say you have multiple credit cards. You can use one credit card and combine them all. Ideally is a 0% credit card. Okay, so as enticing as a 0% interest rate credit card sounds, there's a couple of things that you want to take in consideration. Number 1, with 0% credit cards, you want to take in consideration transfer fees. So those are fees that they charge when you start, pulling in these other credit cards. Sometimes they can charge as high as 3%. So you want to be aware of that. The other term that you wanted to be aware of is the term of the payback period that you can utilize the 0%. So if the credit card says that you only have 12 months to pay at 0%, well, you want to make sure that you're able to pay that amount off during that time, because at month 13, if you haven't paid it off, all that interest that it's accrued, you're going to get slammed with that on month 13. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these credit cards. The number 2 option is personal loan. So you can take all your, your little loans and put them together in a personal loan. You can head over to your local branch of your bank, whether that's North Shore Bank or a bank that you're currently working with, and you can apply for a personal loan. A personal loan is typically, one of the downfalls is that the rate is not the most competitive comparative to, like, let's say, a mortgage. However, if you're in a predicament where you're in multiple of these, high teens, 20s interest-bearing credit cards, then this might be a solution, because hopefully that personal loan is at least half of what they're charging you with those particular credit cards. The third option is a home equity line of credit. So if you happen to be a homeowner, with how the market's going, if you live in the Boston area, this past 3 years, this market has been increasing increasing. It's so hot right now, and the value of home is probably increases. So how can you tap into the money in your home, the equity in your home? Well, you can't just open up my closet door and take out $100 bills. I wish I can, but you can't. So what you can do is you can go and apply for a home equity line of credit, and you can draw on the equity of your home, and you can pay down your debt that way. Okay. The last option under consolidation is taking a loan against your 401k. Now, this option we typically don't recommend, but we do, I wanted to show this to you because for some people, this might be the only solution. And I just wanted to share that with you. The reason why we don't typically recommend this is that, there are not only are there stipulations, and you need to reach out to the person that handles your 401k to get the details. But in addition, you're going to be taxed twice. So there's double taxation. Anyhow, I wanted to let you know that that was an option. So that is consolidation. On the flip side, there's refinancing. Yes, Jim?
Oh, finish this part off. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So on the flip side, there's refinancing. Just give me one moment. I got to move my bar over here. Okay. What is refinancing? Refinancing is just resetting the terms of your loan, hopefully with a lower interest rate. Okay. As interest rates have been extremely low in the last 18 months, you've been hearing or seeing a lot of people refinancing from a 4% mortgage to, a 2.5% mortgage. So it's just resetting your loan in different terms, and hopefully it will, benefit you by having a lower payment. Others might refi where they have a shorter term in terms of, instead of going from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage. There's pros and cons of doing that. And then many people also can refi their student loans if you have student loans. Student loans, when you first come out of school, can sometimes be high. You're looking at 8 or 9% at times. If you have private student loans, you can go to your local lender and consolidate them like you do in number one, but also refinance and get reduced interest rate. Okay. The second option in terms of refinancing, and I am stuck. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I knew tonight was too easy. Okay, there it goes. I got it. Anyone that knows me, I'm not technical, so I'm surprised I haven't run into technical problems yet. So next option for refinancing is a cash out refinance. What does that mean? So if you have also a homeowner, you can actually take out the equity of your home and physically take it out and pay down your outstanding loans that you may have. I'm going to give you a quick example of that. So let's just say you have a home and the fair market value is $500,000, and you currently have $200,000 of equity in that home. Okay. So if you refinance, so you're starting all over again, you're resetting your mortgage, you're going to put down 20%, but 20% of your $500,000 is $100,000. So you put down 100, but then you have another 100,000 that you could cash out and use to pay down your loan. Okay. Jim, what question did you have?
Yes, we had a question that came in, and the question was, I'm trying to summarize it a little bit, but it said that you mentioned utilizing a home equity line, but you also mentioned earlier that variable debt isn't as good, and most home equity lines are variable. So curious why you recommend a home equity line is something to be used to pay off debt.
All right. Well, here, listen, I hear what you're saying in terms of, having a variable loan. And I did say that in bad debt, a high variable loan is not what is good. Okay. So yes, it's not great to have a variable loan because we can't predict it. But what we're doing here is that we're choosing the best of both choices. So when you are taking a home equity line, typically the rate is much, much lower than a high variable rate. So although it's variable, it's still, the benefit still outweighs that negative. And the benefit of that is having lower interest rate with lower payments.
All right. And one more question. You mentioned before about 0% credit cards.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there may be some fees. I recently did a 0 credit card, and I did get hit with fees. And I just was wondering, I didn't understand exactly how much it was, but it looked like I got hit with an upfront charge. Is that normal?
Sometimes it can be normal, which is why it's important before you start consolidating to really understand the fees. Those fees are, what they call transfer fees. So if you're transferring a balance, let's just say you got a city card 0%, 0% credit card, and you're consolidating, a Macy's card. They will charge you for transferring that balance of $3,000 from Macy's over to, the Citibank. And sometimes it can be high as 3%. So it can be common, but this is why it's definitely important to understand all the fees and details before entering into that agreement. Any other questions?
Sorry, Camay, you're good right now. There are 2 people who put in questions, and I'm trying to let them know that they're really great questions, but we're going to answer them toward the end because they're big.
Okay. All right. Well, I love participation. So, okay. So, let me just recap since we got caught up with questions. Is these 2 options and option 1s are, again, more restructuring. It's the debt that you already have. And how can you restructure it to have either a shorter time period or shorter payment to make it easier for you to manage the debt. The next 2 options are different schools on thoughts on how to actually pay down the debt. If you're saying, I don't want to refinance and you don't want to do that, but you just want to pay down the debt and get it off the books, what's the best method of doing that? Okay, so the first method is paying down the highest interest rate first, the highest interest rate loan first, okay? There we go. Okay, so this approach focus on, again, the debts that's the highest rate, okay? But the first assumption that we always have to make is that you have to pay the minimum on all your debts, okay? How this works is that you pay whatever surplus, remember we talked about your surplus, much as your surplus towards the highest interest rate debt off as quickly as possible, okay? And then once you're done with that particular debt, you move on to the next highest rate, and so on and so on. So let me give you an example of that. So back to my friend who had the 18.99% interest rate credit card. So if she had 3 credit cards, one was 7%, one was 12%, and one was 18.99%. Okay, if she can only afford $100 a month towards that credit card, well, she's going to start paying the $100 off of the $18.99 first. Okay, she's putting all her resource, again, as long as you're paying the minimum payment, towards the $18.99. Once that loan is done, then she takes all of those 2 payments, the minimum payments, now they're combined, and you pay off the 15%. Okay, and then once she's done with the 15, then she pays off with the 7%. The benefit of this method is that you're paying as least as possible towards borrowing of funds because you're paying the highest first and then you're paying down the lowest, okay? Now, on the flip side, this is another method of thinking is you pay down the smallest balance first with your resources. This is also known as the Snowball Method, okay? And again, similar to the other method, we have to assume that you're paying your minimum payments on all your debt, okay? So this one, you put as much possible towards your smallest debt and you pay that off as quickly as possible, okay? And as soon as you're done with one, you do that to the next smallest balance debt that you have, and so on and so on, okay? The theory behind this and the advantage behind this is that usually minimum payments are really high. So if you're paying the smaller balance first, you're freeing up these minimum balances and you can start feeling the snowball of the minimum balance growing and growing so that you can pay the debt down, okay? So listen, I talked a lot tonight about, the different options out there. What I'm hoping today is that you take away, tomorrow, you're gonna try some of these solutions and you take away you take away with some of these ideas. Number one is that, get an understanding of what your monthly income. Easy way of that is what is coming into your checking account on a monthly basis. This is after taxes, after benefits, after 401k, what is your monthly income? Because once you know your income, then we need to figure out what's your fixed expenses going out. As I shared with you, it's about isolating. No, it's not about itemizing. It's about isolating, not itemizing. So again, it's easier to isolate and itemize so you don't get boggled down in the little details. Number 3 is reducing expenses where possible. When I had showed you the example of my friend that had the shopping, if you notice, the difference between $100 versus a $50 payment was fairly significant, and that's not a lot of money, $50 a month. So if you can just find any opportunity to whittle down, even if it's $25, $50, it would be beneficial for you in the long run. A good example of this is your Comcast bill. Every time I work with anyone on their budget, I'm always surprised. How could Comcast or Verizon, whatever it may be, cost $300 a month? There's definitely opportunity and room there that you can go back and talk with them, make pretend you're shopping, see what other opportunities that they can give you. Can they reduce your monthly cost so that you can get an introductory cost? Do you really need 300 channels? I know I don't. So there's probably opportunity for you to whittle down that expense. And try to generate as much surplus as you can, because the more surplus you have, the faster we'll be able to pay down the debt. And just give me 1 second here, sorry. And number 5 is make sure that we have a strategy in place to allocate your surplus to your priorities. And, so anyhow, Jim, that's it. What questions do we have?
We have a couple really good ones, and I want to take one of them because it's one of my biggest pet peeves. Somebody asked, I've tried to set up a budget using programs like Quicken or something from my bank, but none of these are easy to work with. You recommend any budget program? The reason why I say this has been a big pet peeve of mine. Budgeting is a real challenge for people, and it's really difficult because most people think you got to itemize 57 things, and then some months you spend it on here, other months you spend different months, and it's all over the place. It's really, really difficult to track a budget unless you really love it. Like, I always find like engineers or accountants, they love that stuff. If that's not you, budgeting can be very challenging. The problem with most programs like a Quicken, like a what's the other one I was just thinking of? Really popular. Oh, it'll come to me in a minute. Oh, Mint, thank you, mint.com. They're reactive, they're not proactive. So what they're really good at is if you put in all the expenses and everything, you can get a report about what happened in the past. So if that's what you're looking for, that can be very helpful for you. What we do here though, is we take the budgeting and all those itemizations and all those things, and we boil it down to one thing. If you do one thing every month, that's all you have to concentrate on. And that's what you can do to do your budgeting. If your goal is just to make sure you're spending the right area, then following our budget program of the one thing can be extremely helpful. Many, many people here that have been working with us have been using the one thing for decades. And they find it extremely helpful. It takes away all the itemization, takes away all the ups and downs in budgeting, and it really keeps it streamlined. So I know who's asking the question. We'll connect with you to see what is best for you, and if that's something that you were thinking about, or more you were looking for something more reactive, you're looking for more of a report. Because mint.com, Quicken can be those things, but they get very complicated and it's very challenging. So that's why we created the one thing, and we'll be doing a presentation somewhere down the road just on that because it's very helpful to most people.
Yeah, so I know who asked that question. Hi, I'll be in touch tomorrow and we can start talking about the one thing.
All right, perfect. There was another question that came in that I really wanted to try to answer, but I'm going to try to do it in a more generic way because I think it just will be more relevant to everybody in the room. It's about student loan debt, right? It's the concept of having student loans. So in this particular case, the person is asking about one of their children who's planning to go to medical school, and it's obviously medical school is very expensive, and you can have a very large student loan debt. So the question is, there's a couple questions masked in here. One of them is, hey, look, I'm very fortunate. I could have the ability to help pay for that, but is that a good idea or not? Or, I've also heard that having large student debt is very burdensome to people. And I will tell you, so let me talk about the burdensome part of student debt. One of the biggest challenges that we see with young people today is student loan debt. Some cases as the kids are coming out with such high student loans that it's more than like their rent. So that's why you hear about a lot of kids moving back to their parents. They can't afford to go anywhere. Student loan debt can be really, really challenging. So if you do have the ability to help a child and have them come out of school without debt, that's fantastic for them. Because I talk about just like one of those big, heavy balls, they attached to your ankle.
Weight.
Yeah, weight. That is
ball and chain.
Ball and chain. Thank you. That's what student loan debt is. It is a ball and chain, and it can be really difficult for young people to try to work through. Now, if it's a medical school student, the thought process is they're going to get a good job, they're going to get paid well, but still, if you're walking out of medical school at $250,000 a year, that payment can be as much as $2,500 a month, depending on how the rate is and what's going on. So it can be very challenging, even if you are going to have a pretty high income. So at best case scenario, perfect case is that you don't want to have that ball and chain around anyone's ankle. Now, the second part of that question is, hey, should I have the ability to help? Should we do that? And that's another great question. It's been one of the biggest challenges for parents in this era is that, hey, we've actually seen some parents will help their children so much that they take away from their own goals, their own retirement, to the point where they literally can't retire when they wanted to because they basically bankrupted themselves to try to get their kids through school. So obviously that's not what we're looking for either. We're looking for some sort of balance around that. And again, as Camay talked about earlier, with our financial planning process, what we love about it so much is we do empower you to make these decisions. What do I mean? If you decide you want to take $150,000 to help pay off a student loan, you will know immediately, if you're doing this process, how that affects you and your goals of maybe retirement or whatever that may be. And what makes it nice is if you look at, let's say $100,000 is what you're deciding to give to your child for student loan debt, we can immediately show you that, hey, maybe that means you got to work another year or two, whatever the situation is. And you may look at it and say, hey, that's totally worth it to me because I don't want that ball and chain hanging around my child. So it's a very individual question, but I wanted to try to answer it in the larger picture. It's really, some people have kids go and have student loan debt because they want them to have quote unquote skin in the game. But then they, help them out when they graduate. There's a lot of different strategies around student loan and so forth. So I know who asked that question. I'm definitely going to talk to you also. Hopefully that answered it for you, but in your particular case though, we'll definitely sit down and have a conversation because we want that balance for you. We want that balance for everybody. We want your kids to do wonderful, but we don't want to be at a detriment to yourself. So these are the issues and things that we have to try to work through. And it can be done, but there's always, there's always a limitation somewhere. Our resources only go so far, and we got to make sure we use our resources to the best of our ability. So hopefully that answered that question. Camay, can you do me a big favor and skip down to the next slide? I do think there's another question in here, so let me see while I'm digging it out. Oh, it's just a big thank you. I just want to let you know that this is the phone numbers to get help. For those of you who ask questions today, we're already going to be calling you, as I know Camay's already said, and the same thing for me for the people who ask the questions tonight. But there's our phone number. Camay, I need you to skip down a couple more just for me. We're also going to be having another friends and family coming up. Camay, did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
There she is. So we have technology is not where we put Camay. Yeah, we don't put Camay in the technology zone. But the next one is the basics of Social Security. That'll be on Wednesday, May 26th at 6:30. And we'll be talking about what is Social Security, how do we calculate the benefit, how might Social Security fit in your retirement plan. There's a lot of things about Social Security that people don't always understand or don't realize. Like, for example, if you have a spouse that maybe stayed home because of, raising kids, or maybe took some time off, that your spouse has the right to half of the other person's benefit. So for example, if one person has a benefit of $3,000 a month and the other spouse benefit is lower than half, they can choose half. They can take $1,500 a month. So there's a lot of things that are out there about Social Security. So on Wednesday, May 26th at 6:30, we'll be going over that. Camay, if you could just pull up our next slide, which is our disclosure. Well, this is the question section. One more, Camay. Nope, the other way, Camay. She's working on it, guys. She's going to get there. She's worn out. She did a lot tonight. There we go. We always have to show our disclosure for the final couple of seconds.
I did it.
Hey, nice job, Camay. So I think we've answered all the questions that came in tonight. I want to thank you all for joining. I know it takes a lot out of your time and day, but we hope you're finding these to be very beneficial. Again, May 26th will be the next one on Social Security. If there's anything that we can do for anyone out there, I did recognize that some people are not necessarily part of our family here. Please feel free to contact us. We're here for resources. Many of you, I recognize the last name, so I'm assuming some relatives. I know some kids were here tonight. So please, at any time, feel free to give us a call. Come here, if you put back up our number there, please. And we'll be here to help you. And as always, we wish you the very best. Hope you're well. And we look forward to a wonderful spring, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you on May 26th. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you, Camay.